So I just received some news that the minister is giving a keynote address in another session, unfortunately running late. But that should not stop us, and the minister will be coming and sharing his views shortly. So I would like to open the session. Welcome you again to our keynote speakers. Today's session is on strategic water resources management in enhancing community resilience. So what we can see is that it's at the core of the theme of this Cairo Water Week, which is water and climate, building resilient communities. Today we will listen to speakers that will take us on a journey on extreme events, on circularity, on disaster risk management, and on community engagement, focusing on 5 main topics: enhancing community resilience to climate change, future land use and climate change impacts on water resources, circular economy to promote sustainable water management, managing extreme events, disasters, which affect communities, and last but not least, a topic that's also close to my heart, is simulation models and use of Earth observation techniques in future planning, which help us to think through alternatives. Above all, we're fortunate today to have 8 keynotes from the highest levels of policy, from the Arab Republic of Egypt, the European Union, Japan, regional and international organizations working worldwide and in the specific MENA region, dealing with communities, disaster risk reduction, drought resilience, environment and waste management, and not in the least, academia. I have the pleasure now to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Chris Fisher of the World Bank, senior water specialist, Middle East and North Africa, based in Cairo. Some 15 years of experience in water management, drought and flood risk management in Europe and Latin America. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. My presentation today is going to show how the World Bank water strategy contributes to enhancing community resilience, contributes to enhancing resilience to climate change. Where do I click to? Ui. There we go. So our water strategy is based on the definition of the framing of the challenge. The challenge for this audience, I think, is well known, so I don't have to go into much detail. We see 3 main challenges. This is water for people, so it's the lack of access to water and to sanitation. Water for food, so this is water management for agriculture to produce sufficient food. And water for planet, which is having healthy ecosystems to provide ecosystem services. On the last one, in recent years, we lost natural water storage, so water stored in aquifers, in wetlands, in forests, and this makes us much more vulnerable to floods and droughts. So the challenges are well known. So what is holding us back? There are issues which are across the sector, and there are also challenges for each of these 3 subsectors. For the issues across the sector, I'm just going to mention 1 or 2 examples. We know the sector is financially not sustainable. Water is often underpriced, and there is a huge gap between the current spending on water and the financing needs. For the more sector-specific challenges, I'll focus on water for planet on the right side. So there is a lack of regulations to control river pollution and degradation. There's limited investment in storage for flood and drought risk management, in natural storage, but also in built storage. And there's a lack of political leadership and cross-sectoral engagement. I focused on this 3rd pillar because of this 3rd pillar also the link to enhancing climate change resilience is the strongest, as we see in the next slides, which are the strategic objectives of the World Bank or of each of these three pillars. And here below, on the lowest one, again, Water for Planet, the strategic objective is to reduce water-related risks and sustainably water management. Of course, also the other pillars, they contribute to building resilience. For example, water for food, improving irrigation efficiency, of course, contributes to building resilience to increasing climate variability. But especially in the last one, in Water for Planet, we have an outcome here, millions of people with enhanced resilience to climate risks. This is part of the World Bank, of the new World Bank Group scorecard, which covers 16 outcome areas and 22 indicators, which went down from over 120 indicators to now 20. And one of them is really building resilience to floods and droughts. So how is the World Bank providing support? How is the World Bank implementing the strategy and providing support to countries to achieve their water security and their resilient goals? Well, we are a bank, so we provide financing, but there's a lot of financing needed. And to make sure that our client countries spend the financing wisely and build also the needed policies and institutional frameworks, we have a set of tools to help clients to build resilience to water-related risks. And I'm going to present two. One here on this slide is the EPIC response framework. This is an assessment of the drought and flood risk management capacities within the countries. At the first level, EPIC, so the E stands for, are there the enabling conditions in place? P, are the plans in place for flood and drought risk management? I, are the needed investments being done? C, is the control of water sufficiently organized? And R, do we have the capacity to respond in case of floods and drought events? On this slide here, the example is for drought risk management. So you see, for looking at sectoral frameworks under enabling, we're looking if there are drought risk policies in place, if there's a drought monitor in place, for example. This assessment looks at water resources, looks at disaster risk management capacity, looks at civil defense. And it provides the needed input to show countries where they have to invest to really strengthen the capacities and build resilience. The next example is the country climate and development report. This is not necessarily a water instrument. This is an assessment that the World Bank already did in over 60 countries in the world that looks at development and at climate change. The objective is to show pathways how countries can achieve development while at the same time working on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and building resilience. On this slide, you see a figure from a synthesis report of 6 MENA CCDRs that we did. And not surprisingly, all of them identified water scarcity as one of the main pressure points. And these reports are now being used by countries to do their development plans, but integrating climate risks, and in case of MENA, integrating investments in water resource management. And how do we then use this information on the ground for projects? So I've provided, this is my last slide also, I'm going to bring in one example, and this is from Jordan. So to address the severe water crisis in Jordan, the government of Jordan, with the support of the World Bank, developed this Jordan Water Sector Efficiency Program. So Jordan, as you know, is one of the most water scarce countries in the world. And we have a huge supply-demand gap, which you can also see here in the graph. The demand is increasing, mainly due to population growth, and the supply, which are the blue bars, is reducing, also due to climate change. And we have this increasing gap, which also with the huge project, which is the Aqaba-Amman conveyance project, a big desalination project, we will not be able to close this. So the World Bank came in and we did several analytics. So we did the CCDR, this I just presented, but we also looked at how does the sector finance work and how can the private sector get involved, and we also looked at dam safety. And based on this, Jordan developed a water resource management project. with 3 components, and I'm going to show now how this actually contributes to building resilience. So the component 1 of this project is sustainable reduction of non-revenue water. So this will achieve that we have more water available and we increase our resilience to water scarcity. The second component is increasing the energy efficiency in the water sector. This actually contributes to mitigation because less energy is needed. And the third component, which is water security measures, we're supporting Jordan develop a drought a drought monitor and also a drought forecasting system, and also looking at how to improve the water allocation. With this, I come to my end, and it was a pleasure, and I'm happy to take any questions later. Thank you.
Here's yeah. So thank you so much, Chris, for your concise presentation. And was clear how you indicate the number of tools, frameworks like EPIC and CCDR, how they link to indicators, and how they help us to go forward. And I'm looking forward to, so also to linking that to other presentations to see whether we can come to a coherent approach to resilience. And often resilience is defined as robustness and flexibility. So both of them together constitute resilience. Now, we are very much looking forward to inviting the Honorable Mr. Saito Hiroyuki. Mr. Saito is Secretary General of the Secretariat of Headquarters for Water Cycle Policy of the Cabinet Secretaries of the Government of Japan. Looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Saito Hiroyuki. I'm a Secretary General for Water Cycle Policy in Japan. During the UN 2023 Water Conference, Her Excellency Ms. Kamikawa Yoko, Special Envoy of the Prime Minister of Japan and former Foreign Minister of Japan, and His Excellency Professor Hani Sueram, Minister for Water and Irrigation of Egypt, agreed on the importance of cooperation based on the concept of dry Egypt and wet Japan through discussions in the Interactive Dialogue 3, ID3. This is the idea with the concept of increasing floods and drought in every corner of the world due to climate change. It will become more important for all countries to share the experience of flood-prone countries like Japan and many Asian countries, as well as the experience of drought-prone countries like Egypt and African and Arab countries. Japan has invested huge amount of money in infrastructure for both flood prevention and securing water resources. And through international cooperation, it has supported similar infrastructure investment in many countries in Asia. In these countries, including Japan, infrastructure investment has significantly reduced the risk of water-related disasters. I would like to reiterate that infrastructure investment will pay off for Africa and Arab countries as well. In Japan, we have also strengthened our non-structural measures with the power of science and technology to complement infrastructure investment. Professor Oki Taikan of the University of Tokyo is recently awarded the Stockholm Water Prize, and he has promoted global hydrology based on global water cycle model. It seems that global hydrology has the potential to share experiences in Asia and in Africa and Arab. For example, we are working with Asian countries to develop flood risk forecasting using satellite data, and we may be able to share our experiences with you. We are also using accurate weather and flood forecasting technology to make more effective use of the old dams in the upstream. We call this technology dam upgrading. Furthermore, we are also working on the implementation of flexible capacity dams, which will improve both flood control and hydropower capability by improving dam operation. Last but not least, I would like to work with the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, to promote the development of international standards on hydrological risk in order to facilitate the international sharing of this experience. There are a lot of things that Japan can do in cooperation with you. I would like to continue to think together about various possibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saito Hiroyuki. What struck me was, of course, the reputation of Japan is well known in investing in infrastructure, in dealing with disasters, whilst my country, the Netherlands, is much more known for the protection side of flood risk management. What I also found interesting, your mentioning of global hydrological models, use of satellite data for flood forecasting, and wouldn't it be interesting if we could make that kind of information available to communities as well? Yeah, not just to planners, but also to communities and to investors. And I believe modern technology will allow us to do that very soon. So thank you very much for your introduction to that. I would now like to ask Dr. Nasser Eddin Obeid to come to the fore. Dr. Nasser is Director General of ASCAT, the Arab Center for the Studies of Arid Zones and Drylands. Dr. Nasser, the floor is yours. You can also give the presentation seated.
Bismillah. بسم الله. لا بد لي في البداية أن أشكر جمهورية مصر العربية قيادة وحكومة وشعبا على جهودهم العظيمة والكبيرة والجبارة في الإعداد لهذا الأسبوع المياه بنسخته السابعة والأسبوع والأفريقي بنسخته التاسعة ليكون منصة ومنتدى عالمي لتبادل الخبرات في أهم القضايا والمواضيع في موضوع المياه نتيجة التغيرات المناخية الشديدة التي أصبحت تعصف بالعالم كله، للاستفادة من هذه الخبرات في الحد من أثر التغيرات المناخية وانعكاسها على الموارد المائية والغذاء. ومصر قامت بجهود عظيمة وكبيرة جدا معروفة وملموسة لدى الجميع بقيادة فخامة السيد الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي في مختلف المجالات، وخاصة في مجال الزراعة والتنمية الزراعية والتوسع بشكل كبير عمودي وأفقي. فأكساد هي منظمة عربية تعمل ضمن ذراع فني لجامعة الدول العربية، وقد حددت استراتيجيته توجيه أنشطتها نحو تحقيق هدف الرئيسي المساهمة بتحويل المناطق الجافة وشبه الجافة بمواردها الطبيعية الكامنة والظاهرة وهياكلها الاجتماعية والسكانية من مناطق هامشية للإنتاج الزراعي والحياة الريفية البدوية إلى مناطق إنتاج مستقرة. فيعمل أكساد من خلال استراتيجيته العشرية التي تعد من قبل جامعة الدول العربية والسادة وزراء الزراعة، ويشارك أيضا وزراء الموارد المائية. وأكساد في عام 1996 أعلن إعلان أنه الأمن المائي هو رديف للأمن الغذائي، بل هم وجهان لعملة واحدة. الآن هم عملة واحدة الحقيقة، لا أمن غذائي بدون أمن مائي. وأيضا في عام 2022 في اجتماع الجمعية العمومية لمنظمة أكساد التي ترأستها مصر، كان هناك إعلان القاهرة وهو موجود أمامكم، وتم توزيعه على أكثر من 800 هيئة ومنظمة وجامعة سواء أممية أو عربية للتكيف مع التغيرات المناخية. وكان أهم 13 بند، أهمها هو البند الخامس: ألا تكون السدود العملاقة والمشاريع العملاقة التي تقومها دول المنبع تؤثر على عدالة توزيع المياه على دول المصب كالنيل والفرات ودجلة. هذه الأنهار الكبيرة تأثرت دول المصب بشكل كبير جدا من المشاريع التي تقومها تلك الدول، فيجب أن تحصل على حصتها بشكل عادل وفق الأنظمة والقوانين الدولية. فنحن لابد لنا أكساد لديه قصص نجاح مختلفة، مشاريع مختلفة، كلها تلعب دورا رئيسيا في موضوع الحد من أثر التغيرات المناخية. منها مشروع المشروع العربي للأحزمة الخضراء التي أقرته القمم العربية المختلفة، ويهدف إلى ما ترونه الآن أمامكم على الشاشة من تنمية الغطاء النباتي، الحد من التدهور الأراضي، تخفيف الانبعاثات الكربونية، والحد من الاحتباس الحراري، وكثير من القضايا. هذا المشروع الأحزمة الخضراء نفذه أكساد بمرحلته الأولى والثانية، وهو وفق مبادرة سمو ولي العهد في المملكة العربية السعودية لمبادرته السعودية الخضراء والشرق الأوسط الأخضر، بل الوطن العربي كله الأخضر. وأيضا مبادرة فخامة السيد الرئيس السيسي لزراعة 100 مليون غرسة شجرة زيتون وأشجار مثمرة أخرى. هذا المشروع يتضمن مجموعة كبيرة الحقيقة من الأشجار النباتات المناسبة، المتحمل الجفاف، المتحمل الحرارة. وأيضا أدخلنا الأشجار المثمرة، منها الزيتون وخاصة الأصناف المتحمل الجفاف، القيسي والصوراني وإجلوط، مجموعة من هذه الأشجار أصناف الزيتون التي تعطي بحدود 25 إلى 30% زيت، ولا تحتاج إلا لكمية قليلة جدا، يمكن أقل من 250 ملم. وأيضا الفستق الحلبي الذي بدأ ينتشر من خلال أكساد في كل الدول العربية، يعمل على صمود وتنمية واستقرار السكان الريف. وأيضا اللوزيات بأشكالها المختلفة. والآن أدخلنا الصبار الذي يؤدي إلى زيادة الإنتاج الحيواني، خاصة المشترات الصغيرة والإبل، بشكل كبير جدا، ويخفض في تكاليف الأعلاف ويثبت التربة، وأيضا يتحمل الجفاف والحرارة بشكل كبير جدا. وأيضا الآن مجلس وزراء العرب البيئة ينعقد الآن الحقيقة في المملكة العربية السعودية في جدة، وأيضا أكد على تكليف أكساد بإنجاز المرحلة الثالثة من مراحل الأحزمة الخضراء التي أكدت عليها القمم العربية. فأيضا أكساد كمنظمة عربية لدينا أكثر من 87 صنف من أصناف القمح ذات الإنتاجية العالية، سواء كان الصلب أو الطري. فعندنا صنف أكساد 1105 عطى أكثر من 11 طن في الهكتار، وكله يصب في صمود واستقرار السكان في الريف، لأن الزراعة كلها كما تعلمون جميعا في الريف وتحتاج إلى المياه. وهذه الأصناف وزعت على عدد كبير من دول العربية، سواء في الإمارات، في الشارقة، في المملكة العربية السعودية عطى 10 طن. الصنف 1133 المقاوم لمرض الصدأ الأصفر، ويعني عطى أكثر من 6 طن. هذه الأصناف 87 تنتشر من موريتانيا، وترون الصور أمامكم. أنا دائما أركز على الصور بشكل كبير لأنها صور حقيقية ووثائقية، وينفذها أجساد في كافة الدول العربية. تجدون الآن في الأردن صنف فرات 8 شعير عطى 5 طن في كمية أمطار لا تزيد عن 250-300 ميلي. وزعنا أكثر من 2000 طن على الدول العربية، منها في لبنان أكثر من 40,000 دلم. الآن إن شاء الله لبنان خلال فترة 3 سنوات بعد عودة الأمن والاستقرار إلى كل ربوع أمتنا العربية بيكون لديه اكتفاء ذاتي من القمح لزراعة 100,000 هكتار بإنتاجية متوسطة 4 طن في الهكتار. في موريتانيا عطى إنتاجية عالية جدا، في ليبيا، في تونس، في معظم الدول العربية. لدينا بنك وراثي حي للأشجار المثمرة المتحمل الجفاف، نوزع سنويا منها آلاف الغراس على الدول العربية. أيضا كما تعلمون بأن التغيرات المناخية لا بد لنا أن نغير ممارساتنا الزراعية، أنظمتنا الغذائية، أنظمة الزراعات البديلة التي يجب أن تتحمل كما قلت الحرارة. منها تطبيق الزراعة الحافظة التي ترونها أمامكم. الزراعة الحافظة يعني زيرو تلج، يعني زراعة بدون حرث، توفر أكثر من 25% في المياه، توفر أكثر من 40% بالوقود، وتزيد بالإنتاجية بين 15 و 20%. وأيضا الزراعات الصغيرة ومتناهية الصغر، منها الزعفران أو نظام الحواكير، نظام المساحات الصغيرة جدا حول المنزل، ممكن أن يؤدي إلى إعطاء إنتاجية ودخل كبير جدا لسكان الريف. وهو يسمى الذهب الأحمر، وبدأ ينتشر بشكل كبير جدا في المملكة العربية السعودية، في الإمارات، وفي تونس والمغرب بشكل كبير جدا، وعليه طلب شديد. وأيضا عندنا مشروع من المشاريع الهامة جدا الذي نفذه المركز إدارة الموارد المائية في أكساد، هو رفع كفاءة الري. نحن عندنا بكفاءة الري لدى الدول العربية، تعلمون جميعا بأن هناك أكثر من 80 إلى 90% من المياه تذهب إلى الزراعة. فوجدنا في الدول العربية بأنه هناك هدر أكثر من 50%، يعني أكثر من 100 مليار متر مكعب من المياه. فبدلا أن نتوجه إلى التحلية ونتوجه إلى الطرق الغير تقليدية الأخرى التي نحن بحاجة إليها الحقيقة، فأنا أعتقد أن ترشيد استخدامات المياه نستطيع أن نوفر 100 مليار متر مكعب من المياه التي تساعد بشكل كبير على التوسع في زراعة المحاصيل الاستراتيجية التي نحن بأمس الحاجة إليها. النمذجة الرياضية والسحب الآمن للمياه الجوفية، نفذنا عشرات النماذج في الدول العربية باستخدام تقنيات حديثة جدا وبرامج متقدمة جدا منذ تسعينيات القرن الماضي في عدد من الدول العربية، في سوريا، في العراق، في السودان، والآن نعمل إن شاء الله على نموذج في الأردن وفي تونس. وأيضا تلاحظون بأن نحن الآن أصبحت استراتيجية أكساد واستراتيجية الأمن المائي العربي التي اعتمدت ووضع مسودتها أكساد بالتعاون مع كافة وزراء الموارد المائية في الدول العربية، والتي اعتمدت في قمة المنامة في الدورة 33 للقمة العربية. ووجدنا نحن بأن بدلا من السدود الكبيرة التي تحتاج إلى مبالغ ضخمة جدا وتكاليف وفترة زمنية طويلة، الآن بسبب التغيرات المناخية وشح الأمطار نعتمد على البحيرات الجبلية ونظام الحفائر 100,000 200,000 متر مكعب من المياه، وأعطت نتائج كبيرة جدا في عدد من الدول العربية. نحن نعمل مشاريع تطبيقية ومشاريع تنموية في هذه المناطق، وأدت من خلال الري التكميلي إلى زيادة كبيرة في الإنتاج، تجاوزت في بعض المحاصيل من 200 إلى 300 في المئة، وأدت إلى وفر جهد كبير بالنسبة لعمل المرأة وجلبها المياه من مسافات بعيدة. وأيضا موضوع إعادة الأراضي المتدهورة والمراعي الحقيقة، والتي سنويا أكثر من 100 مليون هكتار في العالم تخرج خارج الخدمة نتيجة التحديات التي من ضمنها التغيرات المناخية، من ضمنها الاحتطاب، من ضمنها الفلاحات العميقة، ومن ضمنها كثير من القضايا. فوجدنا نحن والجفاف والأمطار، فعملنا مشروع نحن صبحة وصبحية والصرة في الأردن، عملنا مشروع حوض الحماد التي تشارك فيها المملكة العربية السعودية والأردن وسوريا والعراق، وكان من المشاريع الناجحة جدا الحقيقة، من خلال نشر وحصاد المياه، نظام الحفائر، زراعة الأشجار المثمرة المتحملة للجفاف، أدت إلى استقرار السكان حتى خلال الأزمة الماضية اللي مر فيها العراق. والآن هناك مشروع كبير جدا نأمل أن يرى النور قريبا، مشروع السماوة 5 ملايين هكتار، نعمل الدراسة جاهزة، وإن شاء الله يكون هناك التمويل اللازم لها. مطروح الحقيقة عملنا مجموعة من المشاريع بالتعاون مع الفاو ومع إيفاد. أول عملنا 1200 بئر تجميعي من المياه، سعة البئر بحدود 100-120 متر، وعملنا مشروع الجابات ومشروع الجبيونات، سدود الإعاقة هناك. هذه السدود التي ترونها أمامكم أعتقد هي من أفضل النماذج على الإطلاق لاستقرار وصمود السكان في هذه المناطق. وتجدون القمح عطى أكثر من 5 طن أصناف أكساد في مطروح، وأيضا الأشجار المثمرة كالتين والزيتون. هذا المشروع نحن عملناه بمراحل مختلفة، والآن عندنا مشروع جديد هناك إن شاء الله سيتم تنفيذه، وعندنا مشروع في منطقة سيوة، هناك بحر الرمال الأعظم، هناك شح كبير في المياه. هذا المشروع من المشاريع المهمة جدا، تثبيت الكثبان الرملي الحيوي النباتي، وأدى إلى استقرار السكان هناك، وأيضا إقامة الصناعات الغذائية على منتجات التمور والتين وأيضا الزيتون. والآن وقعنا عقد مع وزارة الزراعة للمرحلة الثانية والثالثة نتيجة قصص النجاح التي تحققت هناك. من المشاريع الهامة جدا من المشاريع الهامة جدا الحقيقة خارطة الاستعمالات المثلى في السودان هو سلة الغذاء العربي العالمي. نسأل الله سبحانه وتعالى أن يعيد الأمن والأمان والاستقرار للسودان. هذه الخارطة المثلى هي خارطة طريق، وهي لكل ما هو موجود على وجه الأرض في السودان من يعني إمكانيات وموارد طبيعية، مياه جوفية، مياه سطحية، منتجات غذائية، صناعات غذائية، أغنام، ماعز، إلى ما هنالك من المكونات المختلفة. عملنا هذا أكثر من 150 خبير من أكساد وعدد كبير من الخبراء السودانيين. أعتقد هذه الخارطة بسبب التغيرات المناخية بدأت تطلبها عدد كبير من الدول العربية، فأتمنى أنه نحن نستطيع من خلالها الحد من أثر التغيرات المناخية على الاستثمار الزراعي التنمية المستدامة وفق أهداف التنمية المستدامة. أيضا المشتريات الصغيرة، الغاز الحيوي، الأغنام والماعز والتهجين وزيادة نسبة اللحوم والحليب. أنا يمكن الوقت تداركني بشكل كبير جدا، كان بيودي كل قضية من هذه القضايا تحتاج، وهذا العرض سيكون متوفر لديكم جميعا. فكل الحب والاحترام والتقدير لحضوركم جميعا ولحكومة مصر قيادة وحكومة وشعب ولمعالي وزير الموارد المائية التي أتاح لنا الحضور وهذه المنصة الفاعلة والأساسية والتي أصبحت منتدى عالمي ودولي سنويا تنظمه مصر لما لها من أهمية كبيرة للأمن المائي والأمن الغذائي. إذا بدون ماء لا يوجد هناك غذاء. أنا أعتذر أن أطلت، والسلام عليكم والله ولي التوفيق.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nasser Obeid, also for introducing another perspective to our panel discussion today. And welcome to the Minister, His Excellency Dr. Hani Suwailam, to the panel. We look forward to engaging with you today. I now have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Frederica Fink-Hoyer, Director General for the Environment, trailblazer to advance the green transformation under the European Green Deal, and in particular in the area of circularity in water. And we are looking forward to your views on that today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, no day goes by without a disaster, and unfortunately we have to get used to it. And the weather patterns are not necessarily being nicer to us. It stays. It is unprecedented also as regards water-related disasters. And, excuse me, and with these water-related disasters, we have impacts on our environment, on our economies, on our societies, and we either have the too much or too little water or too polluted water, and very often, sometimes we face everything at the same time. And I was asked now to say what we are doing a little bit on that from the European side, on circularity and on water. How do we project it forward? And we did, first of all, we did an assessment. We made climate projections, and it actually paints a very alarming picture for us. We have what we call the European Climate Risk Assessment that came out beginning of the year. And according to this, Europe is the fastest warming continent. And you can imagine what that means for us. It means more drought, but at the same time also floods and extreme weather events. Actually, it is predicted that annually we have a damage that could rise up to 40 billion euros annually under extreme warming scenarios. But as I said, we are now thinking that already the scenarios that we have today stay with us, and all we can do is to avoid that it aggravates further. So the losses are very clear. And if climate change is certainly worsening the water-related risk, it is not the only factor. It is not just climate change. We cannot just say, oh, it is something abstract. It is actually also the unsustainable water management. It is also the pollution. It is also the ecosystem degradation. All this increases the vulnerabilities of our water, but also our overall planet. And I heard stabilizing of dunes or afforestation. All of this is part of it, because whatever is produced on land, when you think of pollution, ends up in the sea. And we always have to have this approach from source to sea. So to address this, we thought that we have to go for more integrated water management, so as to take into account the different aspects of the sectors that might contribute or might be affected by the water challenges. And one of the first ones we have to look at is the ecosystems, or you can also call it nature, because land use and water resources are going hand in hand. So up to now, we have focused very much on what we traditionally call the blue water, so the fresh water the lakes and the rivers, and we have lots of regulations on it. We have very good drinking water. We have urban wastewater installation and utilities legislation. We do have something for the river basin. We have something for the flood basin. But we not have addressed enough what we call the green water. And this is basically the moisture in our soils and the vegetation which creates precipitation, or which keeps the water and the soil and the moisture in the soil. So these are the vital ecosystems. And we were very much inspired also by last year's Turning the Tide report from the Global Commission on the Economics of Water, which warned all of us that if the current trends continues, then freshwater supplies will fall globally down by 40% by 2030. 2030 is around the corner. So what we also looked at is not only looking at our water frameworks or on a water regulation, but actually now looking very much on soil. We have a soil legislation brought forward, but also on how to conserve and maintain our ecosystems, and that is what we call our nature restoration law, because all of this acts together, because altering the source of all freshwaters means precipitation, then we also shift in what we get as water, either too much or too little. So the land use change, like deforestation or wetland depletion, is really disrupting further the precipitation pattern. So we have now put forward rather stringent targets for our member states by a certain time to reach, to re-wet peatlands and wetlands, to work on the rivers, to green the cities, and so on and so on. So the land use becomes very much into the forefront. But even if water and land, when it is managed sustainably, it then still needs also efficiency solutions, because only then we can provide security for local resilience. And that really helps, obviously, also social and political tensions to ease out. So, as I said, we have a very sophisticated water regulation. We are proud of that. But we also have the Green Deal. It's also good. We are going very much on climate neutrality. But now we are shifting very much into circular economy. That means we are looking at the resource depletion. How much are we dependent? How much are we exposed to resource depletion? But how much are different sectors also contributing to this resource depletion? And where could they then change the pattern into a more circular economy, where you reuse, you upgrade, or you maintain, or you ultimately might recycle. But it starts from the design until the end, that we want to have a life cycle that it is more circular. So this is where we are now looking for, and water is just a resource. It's just a material. It's not different from anything else. We have to become much more water efficient. And that means focusing on reducing water use is really a key issue for us, addressing the losses, improving in general water efficiency, and promoting the reuse and the recycling across sectors. You can do this in energy, you can do it in agriculture, you can do this in coastal areas. Heavy water users, such as agriculture, but also energy, but also transport, must integrate, therefore, water management, but also water protection into their operations. It's really more a mind shift, and it is helped a little bit by some laws. Similar, and I heard what the World Bank said, investment strategies in water-related sectors must consider the future water availability in a changing climate. So where do I put forward a dam? Where do I put forward hydropower? Am I sure that I will have sufficient water in the end? Or shall I perhaps put it somewhere else? It is true that we also had some vetting processes where we had sometimes to say to some member states, you do not get that money for that project because we believe it is not at the right place. You might get the money, but for a different place, but not there. But this is issue of forecasting, but of simulation, also of digital solutions. So all of this means we now factor into this transition towards a more water secure, water efficient world. We also have to really go and factor in circular economy in all its ways. This is what we consider to be our pathway. We are now looking at this in a cross-sectoral way. We have put forward that we will go with what we call a water resilience strategy. This should be multi-annual. It would look at what we can do at local level, that's member states, we cannot interfere there, what we can do at European level, and what we can do globally, because all our systems are interrelated. It is not just that what happens in one place of the earth will not affect the weather somewhere else, as we know it. So we start now with a very comprehensive stock-taking of all water issues to determine further actions that we would like to do to prevent water stress. Of course, we look at also the water legislation, but we think if it is fully implemented, would already be good enough. We rather want to ramp up the efforts on pollution, reduce pollution at its source. Plastic pollution is a big issue for us, and then manage water extraction responsibly and protect the ecological flows into our river. What flows in our river? What discharges are we doing? Discharges have been done in the past, but if the water level is low, the water temperature is high, the same discharges cannot happen anymore, because then the water is tipping, and that is what we had already experienced. So when we say water efficiency first, we would also like to see that business drive their decisions and investments also in fostering innovation in areas like wastewater treatment, desalination, and digital water management solutions. So this is where we will be going with our future water resilience strategy. It's very much also on mobilizing public and private funding. That's what we all need, because we have to address leakages, modernize irrigation systems, and promote, as I said, the green infrastructure. This is costly, and this is long-term investment. So we need to make a lot of simulations and really assessments right. And we do the same when we look and cooperate with our partners. So this will be similar approaches also in our external approaches. So that's a bit where we stand at European level. And I think what we do is a little part, but we have to look at this together because, as I said, everything is interlinked. And therefore, we very strongly support the efforts of the UN Water Convention Secretariat and the broader UN systems work on water and sanitation because, as I said, it's linked and we cannot just start on one side. We have to act on all at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vinkhooy, for your inspiring keynote. Amazed how you linked all aspects together. You mentioned source to sea, you mentioned green and blue water. What especially struck a chord was the integrated approach and circularity. As water experts, we tend to think of solutions inside the water sector, where we're trained, we're educated to do that. So the Director General gave us examples also to look outside our boundaries and look for inspiration for solutions there. So thank you very much for that. I'd now like to invite Professor Hani Swelam. Needs very little introduction, so I'm going to keep it short. Distinguished career in academia and high-level policy as Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation and President of the Ministers' Council on Water for the African Union. Professor Hani Swelam, can I invite you to come to the fore? Are you going to be sitting?
Thank you. I think there is a short video before we start.
Okay.
Egypt is truly a cradle of civilization. The ancient Egyptians began irrigation and agriculture before these concepts were known to humanity, inventing numerous tools lack of control over the river, we face destructive floods or severe droughts, threatening life and livelihoods. These challenges drove us to innovate many techniques that surpass those of other civilizations. Some dams were constructed to regulate the Nile's waters, such as the Kosher Dam built around 2900 BC to protect the capital of the first state, Memphis, from floods. And the ancient Lahun Dam in Fayum, dating back to around 2000 BC, which was part of an integrated engineering system for regulating and distributing the Nile's water. Efforts to tame the river continued into the era of Muhammad Ali, the leader of a radical transformation in the irrigation sector. New canals and drains were dug, totaling 37 canals and drains, 14 bridges to protect the Nile's banks, and 44 sluices for water regulation. Here, Egypt transitioned from basic irrigation to permanent irrigation, marking the beginning of the first generation of the Egyptian irrigation system. King Fuad I continued this approach, and the Aswan Reservoir was built in 1902. Its storage capacity was increased twice later, while further regulation of the river was achieved with the construction of the Naga Hamadi, Esna, Dairot, Edfina, and Faraskour barrages. Completing the first generation system, the construction of the High Dam, based on the 1959 agreement with Sudan, inaugurated in 1971, was a historic event for regulating the river's flow. At that time, Egypt's population was about 20 million, with a per capita water share of around 2,700 cubic meters. We now face significant challenges due to continuous population growth nearing 110 million, while our share of Nile water remains fixed at 55.5 billion cubic meters annually, resulting in a water deficit of approximately 22 billion cubic meters. This has led us to reuse drainage water and establish intermediate mixing stations to make the most of every available cubic meter of water. Additionally, there is a shortfall that is being covered by importing approximately 34 billion cubic meters of virtual water. However, these efforts are no longer sufficient as the water crisis in Egypt requires radical and urgent solutions. Egypt's water's future depends on our ability to transform into prudent and integrated water management, aligned with scientific and technological advancements. The critical moment has arrived for a second generation of the irrigation system in Egypt, as the future requires all of us to be part of this evolution.
Good morning. شغال ولا زي كل مرة؟ I think you heard already the first generation of the irrigation system. Please allow me in between. I will give some terminology in Arabic language, but the presentation is in English. We have invited many guests in the room now, especially the leaders of the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation throughout the country, but we also have some of the seniors who have been contributing in the first generation of the irrigation system. We have some figures that we knew as we were very young. Today they are with us today, just to appreciate what they did for the irrigation system. But we believe that it is the time that we move to the second generation of our water system in Egypt. And I'm going to describe the second generation because you heard already the first generation. The total need of water resources in Egypt is 114 billion cubic meter. And this is impossible to cover from our local resources in Egypt. That's why we import almost 35 billion cubic meter of virtual water in the form of crops, wheat or whatever other of crops. We are the biggest importer of wheat on earth. This is the water balance of the country. We have on one side demand of about 81 billion cubic meter, and on the other side, what is available for us from water resources. We have 55.5, this is our share based on the agreement of 1959 with the Sudan. We have desalination. All the efforts we are doing in desalination allowed us to produce only 0.4 billion cubic meter. Rainfall 1.3, I mentioned yesterday in the opening speech that in the Nile Basin countries, we have 1,600 billion cubic meter of rainfall, and only 3% is reaching Egypt, which means that there is no water scarcity when we come together as a unit, as one unit, which is the Nile Basin unit, because there is plenty of water for all of us. There is no need to fight against water. It's the source of cooperation, and we do believe that there is enough resources for everyone in the basin. At the end, we have all the available resources, 60 billion of renewable water resources. Some of them is groundwater, non-renewable groundwater. We are importing 34 billion cubic meter, and we still have deficit of 21 billion cubic meter. And that's exactly the amount we cover from recycling of agriculture wastewater. So this is the water balance of today. But the issue is not only today, the issue is about tomorrow. What are we going to do in the future? As the video was saying, the water share per capita was 2,700 one day, but it is declining, not because the water is declining, because we are increasing in terms of number. We have 9 million immigrants in the country, and we are very happy, and we never call them immigrants. We call them our guests here in the country. And this is also an adding additional, I'm not saying they are responsible for this, I'm saying that they are adding additional burden on the government of Egypt. And here, if this is the water poverty line, which is 1,000 cubic meter per capita per year. And you can see the deficit of water, which is the difference between this blue line and the orange color or the red color is increasing. That's why we as a ministry, as the leaders of the ministry, we have to cover this deficit every year, which is increasing. The green color is the deficit that the ministry is responsible for covering it. Yes, drinking water is the responsibility of Ministry of Housing, but we are the one responsible for affording the water for the Ministry of Housing to treat it for drinking. So we are the one to find the solution, how we are going to bring more resources every single year. So, of course, we do have a strategy, and we are updating the strategy every now and then. Now we are moving from the strategy 2037 to the strategy of 2050, and very soon it will be finalized. But it's not always about documents, strategies, and policies. We need actions. We need actions on the ground. That's why I'm going to speak today only about actions. So this is the second generation of our irrigation system. This is how we can imagine it. This is our vision for the future. First, we need to recycle and treat more water. Second, we need to use digital transformation. We need to transfer our work to be more digital, and I will explain later why. We need to have smart management for our water resources, infrastructure rehabilitation, and nature-based solution. And this is one of the main focus of our ministry, is to use natural materials for our future projects, and I will give some examples. 5, we have to have a smart and innovative governance. We do have some problems in our system, and we have to have more control and more clearly identified decision-making process. The global role, I think we were able to push this, at least water and the climate. And I'm happy that we have our friend from Japan, because they are our strategic partner, the government of Egypt and the government of Japan, to push water and the climate and put it at the heart of climate action at the global level. And we started in the COP27 doing that. Seventh, human resources is part, because it's not about only stones, it's about human being, and mainly our people and my team and my colleagues in the Ministry of Water Resources. Finally, we are speaking about the media, how we can communicate all of that to the stakeholders, how we can raise the awareness of different stakeholders in the country. So this is our vision for the second generation of the irrigation system, الجيل الثاني لمنظومة الموارد المائية في مصر. So if I take the first one and the water treatment, I said we're already treating 21 billion cubic meter, but that's not enough. We have to go aggressively to treat more water and recycle more water. Recycling the water one time is not enough anymore. You have to go for the second and the third time. So this is a drainage system in the Delta area. I'm just taking this part from, and this is an actual drainage system. So this is the map of our drains in the Delta area. And when I say drains, I'm speaking about the open channel drains, because there is another network which may be 30 times more complicating than this one, the pipelines that are installed under each farm in the Delta. Because our foreign colleagues and friends, when they walk in the Delta, they say, come on, Egypt is still using surface irrigation and wasting a lot of water. And I hear it from ambassadors, you have to do something in the Delta. You guys, you need to know the system that the crop takes its water and the water goes below the root zone in pipelines, and we collect it again in this green complicated network, and that's exactly the water that goes to the water treatment plants that we already constructed. The first one is Al-Mahsama water treatment, which is treating 1 million cubic meter. And this is exactly the water that you see the farmer using in his farm, using surface or furrow irrigation. We are not encouraging furrow irrigation or surface, because all our new lands, the desert lands, are modern irrigation. Even the old ones are moving step by step to modern irrigation. But I have to be very clear, it's not in our vision to move the entire country to drip irrigation or sprinkler irrigation, because technically this is not correct. And we can speak about it for hours. Because if I do that, I cannot recycle water. If I just give I will have to suffer from salinization of our soil, then will reduce the productivity of the land. So there will be many problems. So the idea, because I'm stressing on this, because there are some initiatives speaking always, we move all the country to drip irrigation. This is technically not correct. And I can debate online or live with anyone who wants to debate this topic. Because exactly this is the water that is going to Mahsama water plant, and the biggest one on earth is the Bahr al-Ba'ar water treatment, 5.6 million cubic meter per day. This is the water that's coming from the surface irrigation. And the third one, which is breaking all the records, 7.5 million cubic meter per day. And these three are adding 4.8 billion cubic meter to our recycling. So whoever is going to be a minister in 2 years from now and is going to stand here is going to announce that we are recycling not 21 billion cubic meter, we are recycling 26 billion cubic meter. But this is what is coming into our system in the coming 2 years, based that they already opened and fully operating 3 plants in our system. So I just want to give you some highlights. This is the Delta project, the new Delta project in the Western Desert. And this is part of the recycled water, the one on the bottom left side of the screen, 7.5 million cubic meter per day. This is a drone video, so it's a real video, it's not graphics. And this is the first phase of the project that has been constructed for how this 174-kilometer long of canal, what they call the New Nile or the New Valley, whatever the name in the media, but this is what we are installing in the Egyptian desert to recycle the 7.5 million cubic meter of water. And this is another cross-section in the middle of the desert, as you can see here. So we have pipeline 22 kilometers. We have open channel, the one that you see, 152 kilometers long. And this is the one which is the most difficult one in installing this cross-section or this canal inside the water. So we first put the sand, we compact it very well, and then we install this box section to transport the water for a distance of more than 170 kilometers to reach the water treatment plant and then to go for the agriculture areas. The future is also that we add desalination for agriculture. 2 years ago, I was afraid to speak about this topic because people were criticizing us when we say desalination for agriculture. And we have been speaking about this since 10 years now because that's what has to come. The area of the Middle East has no any other option. We have only 3 S: sun, sand, and salty water. These are the 3 S available in this region. And we have to make sure that there should be a way to produce our food out of the sun, sand, and the salty water. I can tell you Spain is using desalination for agriculture for more than 10 years now. Australia is moving to desalination for agriculture. Morocco has started already a pilot project for desalination for agriculture. And Egypt has to have its model to desalinate water powered by solar energy for food production. Of course, the desalination price per cubic meter has to drop. Who can imagine that we are today having contracts to produce kilowatt hour of solar energy using photovoltaic for $2 per kilowatt hour? 10 years ago, this was over 25 US dollar cent per kilowatt hour. Today, we are producing it for 2 US dollar cent. Desalination has to follow the same path of the renewable energies. But who is interested to do such R&D and innovation? I can tell you, Germany is not interested in the technology of desalination. And I can tell you, Japan is not interested to desalinate water. We are the one who has to work on this technology because they were interested in energy. They are interested in hydrogen. They are interested in wind, in solar, but not in desalination. Few of them are interested. I can say USA might be, Australia, maybe Korea. These are the countries that we should be collaborating with in order to have desalination for agriculture, but we have to have our R&D. Ownership of know-how is the key. Because we cannot, with the prices today of membranes or RO, I don't want to go in more technique and more terminologies, we cannot desalinate water for agriculture. The price of desalination has to drop by 50–60% at least in order to speak about desalination for water. But we are interested in starting a new unit in the Ministry of Water Resources for water treatment and desalination to have the know-how. The ministry has to own the know-how in the coming period, and at least we need to start. The second issue, I know it's difficult to tell the ministry that he's exceeding the time, but you have to try. Otherwise, I will speak for hours. So digital transformation is the second dimension of I will try to be faster. Why we want to move to digital transformation? It's not because it's a new brand, it's a new trend. No, because there are needs for that. We have shortage in human resources. We have shortage of our engineers. We are falling below the normal or the standard number for engineers per kilometer of canals. We have lack of engineers in the ministry. We have too many employees. We have 70,000 employees, but we have only 4,000 engineers. And with the time, the number is decreasing. So we have to have an additional tools to help us. Precision water management is a topic. Transparency and anti-corruption is a very important issue here when we speak about digital transformation. So we are doing that already, and we are continuing to do that. So digital transformation, we are digitizing. We already digitized all our canals and drains, so we know every single point where it is. All our infrastructure are already digitized, and we know them, and we give them even an ID. So every single water structure in the country now has an ID, like your ID. So we know when it was constructed, which section, which city, etc., etc. And don't underestimate, because we have 74,000 water structures in the country. And then we're moving now to, this is an example of how we clean our canals, and everything is digitized now. So people, they have to put their contract in each sector in the country, and we observe and we monitor that from the headquarters. We have also a new tool to communicate with the farmers, because this is always a challenge. How we can communicate with the farmer. We have now a new tool that we tell them, because always they are complaining there is no water in the canal. There is no water in the canal. Yes, there is no water because it's not the turn for this canal. There are turns. There are dates for each canal. We open here, we close there. We cannot have continuous flow in the entire country. So we communicate with the farmer, put the name of your canal, and then you know when it's your turn and what time and which hour you will get your water. It's a first starting, and this will be the tool to communicate with the farmer in the future. We are very much interested in the technologies. We are now studying how we are going to use drones in order to help us to overcome the issue of gaps or a lack of engineers in different locations, and to get more. It's not only about taking videos, but about analyzing the data of crop colors, crop water stress, evapotranspiration, etc. And I think Dr. Hisham will teach us how we are going to do that. Smart management is the other dimension. From forecasting, we have the models now to do a rainfall forecasting. We are installing and helping our African countries, and especially the Nile Basin. We installed a similar forecasting center in South Sudan. We installed one in the Congo, and we are going to continue helping the Nile Basin countries on that. So we know when the rainfall is coming, when the water will arrive to Egypt, and which location in Egypt. And satellite image processing, I'm not going to speak because we use it in all our daily work today, cropping pattern, identifying the crop water requirements in certain areas in the country, etc. Water allocation, we are now in a very difficult transition phase. We want to move from managing our water resources by level to discharge. I'm not going into the details, but it's a very complicated issue that will take some years till we finish this process. We are using AI now. We are training our system based on the experience of the older generation that is here. And we thank them because we capture their knowledge. We train our machines in order to behave like this in the future when we have lack of engineers or we miss the experience. The recently used model is DE Africa. DE Africa is a very interesting model that was developed by the Australian government, and they are allowing us to use it for free. What you see here is observation of our waterways in the country. The red color is telling you that there is erosion in this area, and the blue color is saying that there is sedimentation. So we capture the area, we identify, we have a problem here. The red color, we have to investigate, we have to study, and this was a real process when we implemented this program. And our engineers, they have to visit the site and identify what's going on and which mitigation action has to be implemented in such an area. Infrastructure rehabilitation and nature-based, I think you all know we have the water rehabilitation or canal rehabilitation project. We try to modify it by developing a guideline to be more scientific in the implementation process. We also have rehabilitation and enhancement of the technology of High Aswan Dam, and I'm happy that the colleagues from High Aswan here, this is a 3D scanner that scan all the tunnels of the dam and tell us what's happening where, so that we can do the required action, and we are doing a lot. There is a lot happening inside the dam and outside the dam for the time being. We are repairing our gates. We have discovered that we have problem in 30% or more of our gates. We are doing maintenance in all the gates throughout the country because this is the way to control the water. We have reviewed 47,000 water structures and identified which ones are critical, which ones are very critical, etc. And now we are having a national project for rehabilitating at least the first two categories, the very critical one and the critical ones. Infrastructure rehabilitation and new structures. We have here the Dairut canal that is barrage that's supported from the Japanese government, huge project that is controlling the water for 1,400 acres in the delta. Even some new projects, some new components, R&D results have been now resulting in a new type of telescape that we control the water by the end of the canal. So in order to minimize the wastage of water by an innovative and ready-made type of small structure that we transported by truck and install it at the end of each canal so that it can control it. Nature-based solution, it's not about, again, trend, it is about challenges. We have some canals that has swelling soil, that has problematic soil, that you cannot use concrete or any other tool. And we have left it for years without any rehabilitation because the soil is not accepting any type of structure to be put above. That's why we are, for this type of soil, we're using nature-based solution by the help of our National Water Research Center to have a mix of natural materials and natural soil with cementing materials so that we can rehabilitate such type of canals. We are using, this is our famous project in the north coast of Egypt, which is using nature-based solution for protection, funded by the GCF and in collaboration with the UNDP. This is a successful case that is now becoming a role model, and many of our friends and colleagues, ministers, they come to visit this project. It's a very simple one. It used the local bamboos, البوص اللي موجود في الساحل الشمالي, and then you structure it in the way you see in the picture on the left. And with the sand movement over the year, the sand starts building such dunes that you see on the right side of the picture, and you protect the community, and it's function very well, the very cheap cost, and using the local materials help. The ones who developed these materials or connected them together are the local women in this area. So it's a very interesting project. Sand nourishment, we are working with the Dutch government now and helping us to use this technique for protecting the north coast of Egypt. Governance, and a lot of work is doing here. The most important highlight of the governance is the Water User Association. We were able, by the help of the sector of water improvement in our ministry, to form 6,474 water user association, and they have representative, and the representatives in the village, they have a representative at the governorate level, and the governorate level, they have a representative till we reach the National Water Council, which is led by His Excellency the Prime Minister. So with this, you can connect the decision-making process between the smallest farmer and the Prime Minister in the country, and we do have this structure in place. The global role, I think we started in the COP27 by putting the water on the climate agenda. I think Cairo Water Week is the 7th version, has been playing a very important role in disseminating and spreading the idea of transboundary cooperation, water scarcity, etc. We have the UN Water Conference collaboration, the ID3, and I think there were very important messages that were seriously taken out of the interactive dialogue in collaboration with the Japanese government, as I mentioned. The AWARE initiative, I think you heard yesterday, if you attended the session, it started very young. Today it has a headquarter in Geneva. In less than 2 years, we have already 30 countries partner in this. 4 UN agencies committed already to coordinate different pillars. We have secured the funding to train 3,000 African professionals, and we already completed the first couple of courses. 200 are already trained, and we are now clustering the problems in the region in order to have a kind of mobilizing fund for implementing infrastructure projects on the ground. So the last pillar is our human resources, or the one before the last. Human resources is decreasing, and we have intensive training courses, training programs. 261 training programs were implemented over the last 2 years, 6,788 trainees. When I say trainees, I'm speaking about ministry employees, I'm speaking about African and regional trainees, I'm speaking about UNESCO programs and water knowledge program, the one that we did in collaboration with the Italian government. This was very interesting. One of the problems that the training center helped us to do is the picture on the left side, the bottom part, the water hyacinth. The water hyacinth is one of the main problems that's costing us money in the ministry, because we have to remove it, and not only remove it, we have to dispose it. Now, with the help of our training center, we will be able to use it for handicraft materials, nature-based materials that are sold in the market right now, and allows us to get it out of the water, but the women in the villages start processing it. Communication with the media, of course, it is one of our main issues, how we communicate our messages to the farmers. Not only go and sit with them on the floor, but work with them and communicate with them through the apps, as I mentioned. With the public, we have already memorandum of understanding with the religious people in the country, Muslims or Christians, in order to help us in spreading this through their religious actions and meetings. School kits, interesting, I don't know whether Professor Naken in the room, we have developed in Aachen school kits for water that the day come now that I am a minister and I'm using it to give it to the education minister to be implemented in the school. After almost 10 years of not being able to implement it in the country. And now the happy news is that the Minister of Education already implementing it this semester in the schools to help them to raise their awareness in a water topic. Research is the main pillar for our strategy here. Without the research and the researchers, this will not be able to implement. So research and innovation are the key words for implementing a successful. Finally, this QR code has our priorities for our partners who want to collaborate, for our donors who want to share with us. We have identified our priorities in the coming period, how to implement the water vision, and how to implement the second generation of the water system. And you can visit this site, and then you get all the details about our future plan for projects to be implemented. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hani. I'm not going to try and summarize that or make a synthesis. What strikes me is your vision of moving forward, going forward in terms of technologies and investments, but also in terms of knowledge and linking to communities. And I'm hoping that later we'll have some opportunity to have another discussion on that. I'm also pretty sure that the presentation of the minister gives a lot of inspiration to our next speaker, Professor Hisham El Ashkari, who's an academic leader in his field, combining remote sensing and Earth observation with mathematical modeling, helping us to better understand disasters, extremes, and uncertainties. Professor Hisham, it's a great pleasure to invite you to come.
Thank you so much, William, for the introduction. It's a great privilege and honor to be here with everybody, and it's a big shoe to fill after His Excellency Dr. Hani, his presentation. So let me jump into it, because I know we are running out of time. Actually, we ran out of time. But anyway, so just like, pointing on the global risk report and the different kind of pillars which are presenting, the different kind of global risks that we are facing in humanity. And you can see over short term and over long term, the different kind of pillars, be it economic, environmental, geopolitical, societal, and technological. But over the course of 10 years, you can see the shift towards environmental global risks, which are going to be taking the center stage, or the most important risks that we are going to be observing. Like the most significant climate change threats, which are water related, which can induce displacement, forced displacement, migration, and human mobilization. You can see like, a list of some of these incidents. However, our guiding principle in our work at the Earth System Science and Data Solutions Lab with my team that we are trying to, our guiding principle is data democratization, where we are able to provide accessible climate intelligence that empowers diverse stakeholders to make informed decisions. And this is what we saw from His Excellency, like a data-driven approach where you are having observations and data in order to make meaningful decisions. Today, I'm going to be touching on 4 major pillars in my talk, which are the advances between Earth observations and data sciences, that we are trying to foster innovative solutions to address water-related issues. Among those solutions are AI-powered Earth observations for water resources predictions. I'm going to be touching on dynamic climate risk indices, a little bit of predictive analytics for water-resilient infrastructures, which is going to be quite important, where you're going to be establishing those desalination water plants if you want to do that in the future, and some ecosystem-based adaptation for water security. So these are the 4 major issues, and on each one of them, I'm just going to be presenting a very short case study. The anatomy of our decision-making system is a combination of Earth observations and data sciences, where we are utilizing a wide range of observations from the UV, from the visible, optical, microwave, radar systems, all of that, to train our models and to be aware of what we can get from our models. And then we have some kind of predictions which can be leveraged with different new data sets, and make sure that the system is there is a kind of a feedback mechanism to make sure that the action, the outcomes are meaningful, and then you can feedback this into the system to make sure that you are on the right track and to maintain accuracy, sustainability, and efficiency. Some of the questions or some of the examples that I'm going to be showing today are related to drought and water scarcity, flooding and coastal erosion, extreme heat events and agriculture decline, as well as cyclones and extreme weather events. And all of these are water related, and I just want to touch very briefly on each one of them as one of the thematic areas that was presented in this session. A case study here, Wadi Rim in Saudi Arabia, where we observed a massive amount of floods coming from land into the water system. And as Dr. Florica mentioned, it comes from land to water. So this kind of integration between the different ecosystems is very, very important. So you can see an impact on marine ecosystems or marine environments as a result, as a consequence of a flash flood on the ground. So looking into something like this and how it can be managed by looking into topography on land, to be aware of what is the drainage system there, what is the drainage order, the different kind of stream orders. And you can see here the 2 red lines, which are stream orders of order 5, very high level stream orders combined to a stream order of level 6, which feed back into the water system, and it shows you the areas which are high risk areas. So you can do some kind of mitigation measures and projects on areas like this. Nepal, a country which is facing massive amount of flooding, a country which just received 500 millimeter recently, over the course of 3 days. Looking into a methodology like this, where we are applying soil water assessment on different kinds of water basins in order to understand the behavior or the climate change impact on monsoon period, and also to look into the aridity index in the pre-monsoon. So here we are showing you different kind of variables or parameters, water-related parameters, and those parameters are put into models. So we are putting different kind of scenarios, the moderate and the most extreme. And as you can see, these parameters are telling us that the monsoon period is going to be even more prolonged, and the number of monsoon days are going to be very long, which induce massive amount of floods, which will have an impact on the different ecosystems again. So you can see the interconnectivity or the complexity of the systems, as you can see, one feedback to another, and this is something which we can look into. And in order to make sure that our models are accurate, we always run into iterations of our models to make sure that the accuracy is pretty high. And you can see from different scenarios in our models these heat maps for 3 different variables, namely precipitation, maximum temperature, and minimum temperature. We create those heat maps, and those colors represent high level of accuracy. So basically, when you are having models which are predicting something like this, it can really provide you with pinpointing high-risk zones, prediction of climate-driven moves, warn at-risk areas early, as well as direct resources efficiently. So it gives you a way of managing and being able to deal with issues of that sort. Another example is looking into meteorological parameters, and here we have a case study along the Nile River Basin, and a paper that was published in the IGARS meeting recently this year, and actually His Excellency Dr. Hani was one of the co-authors on this paper. And here we are discussing VPD, vapor pressure deficit, which is how much moisture is present in the air as a variable which does have an impact on water use efficiency. And by looking into that and looking into the relationship with different kinds of crops, we were able to see the threshold line, which was 3.5 kPa for that VPD, and this value tells us what is the cutoff or the threshold at which these crops are not going to be able to use water efficiently. So you can have a threshold value where it can tell you when you reach that, when this vapor pressure deficit in the atmosphere is being hit, you know what's going to happen for the crops in the future. We put that in climate models and some different kinds of scenarios, and we see the areas which are going to be hit most in the coming short term and a little bit longer term, 2030, 2050, and that will help us to implement a different kind of efficient irrigation techniques, as well as drought-resilient varieties for using different kinds of crops which can be more resilient towards droughts. Another phenomenon, I'm not sure if some of you might have heard of it, what we call the hydrological whiplash. The term whip in Arabic, it's kurbag. It's like this kind of sudden motion between extreme droughts to extreme floods. So basically, you are moving from a year, to the following year, from year 2019 to 2020. It's a motion from wet to dry, followed by another year which is dry to wet. And this kind of phenomena, the jump from extreme drought to extreme flood, is what we call the whiplash. Very big hydrological phenomenon. That's the world is really looking into right now. And we are doing this on the US West, and we are identifying years of mega droughts, as you can see. And by projecting into different kinds of climate scenarios, we are looking into different climate scenarios by 2099, and we can highlight some mega drought years. And this is very important when it comes to water use efficiency and to different kind of how you are going to respond. If you have hydropowers, if you have irrigation, urban planning, all of that is being affected one way or another. And for that, we do some kind of crop switching techniques in order to put scenarios for a better future. I have few things that I wanted to share. Alexandria, like Alexandria in Egypt is one of the cities which has been warned for what might be happening in the future of future cyclones, a city that receives 200 millimeter rain per year, very close to what happened in Darna, like receiving 240 millimeters in 24 hours, which can really have a big impact in the future. Some of the images that happened in Darna, Libya. Could this have been avoided before, after damages? And if we do this kind of analysis, looking into basins, looking into areas of innovation, looking into elevation, drainage networks, slope, curvature, all of these maps, putting them in a weighted overlay model with very high accuracy, you end up with a flash flood risk map. So we highlighted zones of high flash flood risk before the fact. And this took us to the very last couple of slides, 2 more slides, and I'm done, about Alexandria, the compound effect of land subsidence in the city of Alexandria. So we monitored using radar systems some areas which are highlighted in red, which are suffering land subsidence. Others are built up, which is having an uplift. But you can see the trend of land subsidence. We use some innovative methodologies in order to forecast how the topography is going to look like in the future. And this is showing you stream orders in 2015. And in 2023, and with our models, we are able to forecast or project on how the topography is going to look like and how the stream orders are going to change, highlighting zones and regions which might be at risk. So this can be quite useful for decision makers to be aware of what to expect in the future with different climate scenarios. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hashem. I think we know where to find you, because there's a lot of room for discussion and exchange. It's a pity we don't have more time for that. I would like to ask Ms. Nora Ashkar, Chief of the Regional Office for the Arab States of the United Nations, Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. And DRR policy, coordination, risk assessment, and stakeholder engagement are all part of Mrs. Ashkar's brief.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to add to my colleagues and the panel members to present about climate change impact on water and disaster risk reduction. As you can see in the map, population and economic growth combined with the impacts of climate change are rapidly increasing demand on water resources. By 2050, the total population in countries with critical water will be increased by 50%. And by the end of this decade, due to population and economic growth, demand for fresh water is expected to outstrip the supply by 40%. As shown in the map, the level of water stress is likely to increase in the Middle East and West Africa, due in part to population growth and increasing consumption. Drought is both a symptom and a cause of water stress. It amplifies water stress, while the lack of water aggravates droughts, as per the World Health Organization. Climate change is exacerbating this problem, as higher temperatures and lower humidity cause droughts to increase in frequency and in severity. Africa is particularly vulnerable and has already suffered a 29% increase in the number of droughts over the past 2 decades. Integrated water resources management is important. The aim is to forge integrated water planning that optimizes management of the supply and the use of water. I want to highlight some crucial points about the relationship between water and disaster risk management, particularly in the context of our ongoing efforts. First and foremost, it is important to recognize that 90% of disasters are water-related. This statistic underscores the critical role that the water plays in our risk landscape, affecting everything from floods to droughts to water quality issues. Understanding this connection is vital for developing effective strategies to manage these risks. We are witnessing that climate change is intensifying these water-related risks. Increased rainfall, variability, rising sea levels, and prolonged droughts are all consequences of climate change that significantly impacts water availability and quality. All these risks grow, so does the need for adaptive measures to protect communities and infrastructure. Mitigation strategies are essential to save lives and protect development. Effective water management practices and disaster risk reduction measures can reduce vulnerabilities and enhance resilience. This proactive approach is not just about responding to disasters. It's about preventing them and safeguarding our progress towards sustainable development. The case study I want to talk about now is about case of Sudan under the Water in Heart project. In the Water at Heart project, we do emphasize on 2 approaches: the upstream using early warning systems and the downstream using capacity building to improve water management. To support effective risk assessment in Sudan, we began by collecting global databases on model hazards, exposure, vulnerability, and capacity information. This comprehensive data allows us to better understand the multifaceted risks faced by the country. By integrating this information, we can tailor our strategies to address specific vulnerabilities and enhance the resilience of communities. In light of the recent floods that have affected various regions of Sudan, we took the initiative on flooding mapping. This process involves analyzing statistical imagery and other data resources to accurately assess floods, effects, and impacts. We are also working to enhance preparedness and response capacities. We are looking at early working systems and risk knowledge. This will focus on establishing effective early warning systems, capacity building, and fostering collaboration among stakeholders. By bringing together experts and community leaders, we are aiming to build a robust framework for timely and actionable alerts, ensuring that communities are better equipped to respond to emerging threats. We're working on community-based awareness campaigns with our local partner, the Red Crescent Society, in order to access the most remote and most vulnerable people and communities. Those approaches are inclusive and gender sensitive. It also takes into consideration the needs of persons with disabilities. This is all in order not to leave anyone behind. Finally, we recognize the importance of securing funding and forming partnerships to increase risk-informed investments in water management in Sudan. Our plan involves identifying potential funding sources and engaging with various stakeholders to create collaborative opportunities. For Egypt, I would like to say that critical impact of sea level rises, low-lying lands in the Nile Delta are home to 25% of Egypt's population. Also, there is an increasing trend of extreme weather events, flash floods, and extreme heat. In this respect, UNDRR is working in Egypt to support the national government in developing and updating its national strategy, including climate change adaptation. We are also working with different cities to make them more resilient. This is in line with the MCR 2030 initiative. We're working with Sharm el-Sheikh and Aswan by supporting local governments in adapting plans and developing plans in order to be more resilient. In Sharm el-Sheikh, the public health, floods, and flash floods are two of the three most important hazards that were identified and we will be working on. With Aswan, heat waves and floods, alongside other hazards, have been prioritized. Climate change increases the frequency and intensity of hazards, the exposure and vulnerability of communities and individuals, and the stress on water and food security is increasing. Current mitigation efforts are insufficient. A radical scale-up in adaptation measures and a comprehensive approach to risk analysis and management covering a full range of hazards is required. Climate crisis impacts such as sea level rises or ocean acidifications are growing global challenges that have not been adequately addressed in current development planning. This failure to account for risk has hindered planning and consequently underestimated the cost benefits of rapid climate action. I'm almost done. Finally, systems need to be better quantifying the extent to which their assets will retain their value in the era of climate change. Vulnerability and inequality interact in a vicious circle. Disadvantaged groups suffer disproportionately from the adverse effects of climate change. The recommendations that we have are to mobilize political leadership and create momentum around water resource management. Strong political commitment is essential for our work. Working with national and local governments, comprehensive disaster and climate risk assessments, empowering communities, that is crucial for sustainable development. Finally, I would want to talk about UNDRR commitments. I want to highlight the collaborative efforts between UNDRR and UN water members as we work together to fulfill our agenda. First, we are committed to enhancing our understanding of water-related losses and damages by gathering and analyzing data on those impacts. We can better inform policy decisions and improve resilience strategies. Second, we will utilize the principles for resilient infrastructures. These principles guide us in designing and implementing infrastructure that can withstand the increasing pressures from climate change and water-related disasters. Finally, we aim to improve early warning and early action systems. Timely and accurate information is critical for communities to prepare for and respond to water-related events, ultimately saving lives and minimizing damage. Thank you so much.
So thank you very much, Ms. Nourashkar, for persevering also. The last speaker, last but not least, Alex, I know this is a tough one for you, but we're really appreciating your input. Global work on sustainable wastewater management under the Source to Sea Pollution Unit of the Ecosystems Division. Alex is with UNEP, United Nations Environment Program. Alex.
Thank you very much, William. Let me just put this here. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank you very much, the government of Egypt, for inviting UNEP to this very important plenary session. We're going to talk about a smelly topic, it's wastewater, and I'm so sorry for the ones that are eating now, but it's an important topic. It's a topic that was mentioned by several of the speakers in this panel, and it's in the heart, and it's closely related with the topic of our session, that is community resilience. Sustainable wastewater management is key to boost their community resilience. And I'm going to bring 6 elements for your reflection. One is that proper wastewater management prevents the spread of waterborne diseases, safeguarding public health. But beyond that, by treating and reusing wastewater, communities can reduce their dependence on new freshwater resources. And as the Minister of Egypt on Water had said, we need to reuse not once, but twice, or maybe 3, 4, 5 times the same drop of water. Effective wastewater treatment reduces the contamination of water bodies, preserving ecosystems and ensuring the health of aquatic life from source to sea, as mentioned by the representative of the EU delegation. That's very important. We're not only talking about our rivers, lakes, and aquifers, but also about our coastal areas, our deltas, our seas, and the ocean. And climate resilience, water is already in the heart of climate resilience, and Egypt played a big role on that. And by recovering energy, nutrients like phosphates, nitrates, and reusing clean water, wastewater can contribute not only to better adapt to the changes on climate, but also actually to mitigate climate change. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that up front. There are many economic benefits like generation of green jobs and supporting local economy, and of course, access to clean and healthy environment for all, reduces inequalities, reduces the stress on the social fabric of our societies, and promotes resilience to face challenges. We all agree in my city, in the city of my country, Rio de Janeiro, in 2012, that we're going to put together Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. And one of the most important for this audience is Target 6.3, that we all agree that we're going to be working so we could reach 2030 with the half of the proportion of the untreated wastewater solved, and that we would substantially increase the recycling and safe use of water. I wish I could bring good news. We are moving ahead, but with quite inequalities, and I'm going to address that. There is a strong mandate that member states like Egypt, like Japan, gave UNEP, all member states, in the United Nations Environmental Assembly in 2017. Our countries asked the organization that I currently work now to support developing countries within available resources and upon request by strengthening their capacity to reach the target of having by 2030 the amount of untreated wastewater reaching our water bodies. Doing that, including gender perspectives and including treatment wastewater options. How we are now. 2 months ago, UN published a report that showed the progress on indicator 6.3.1. And we only have data from 2020 to 2022 because lack of data was a problem. But that set of lines there tell a history that inequities are increasing. And a very important continent, or a very important part of a continent, sub-Saharan Africa, has been left behind. All the curves that points up means that we are in a good trajectory. The world curve, the black one there in the middle, it's growing a little bit. But when we look Eastern and Southeastern Asia in red there, and sub-Saharan Africa in red, we see a decline. We cannot allow that to happen. Your countries, together with the UN, with the private sector, with the NGOs, with civil society, we have to step further and guarantee that we are going to address that huge challenge in the next 6 years that it's there. This is the global map, this is the global map on where we are. Blue is good, dark red, it's very bad. So we all here should embrace that challenge of having clean and healthy ecosystems with treated wastewater. And we bring the perspective of climate mitigation plus, William. So it's to step on our climate ambitions, to not only to keep it under 1.5, but use every possible solution for that. And wastewater, and I've been talking with many of my colleagues on the climate practitioners, they consider wastewater a low-hanging fruit that was not yet probably addressed by the climate mitigation agenda. Our wastewaters from our cities only, not talking about agricultural wastewater, but our cities, generate as much greenhouse gas as the whole global aviation industry. And that's growing because population is growing. So we're not talking about a small number. But there is a catch. Actually, it's a small number. It's 1.5%. Because in general sense, there is no big number to reduce greenhouse gases beyond fuel, beyond oil, and we know how hard is it. We've been trying for 30 years to reach that. So now we have to look to solutions like wastewater, not as a problem, but as a solution for climate mitigate. Wastewater generates 12% of the global methane. We can reduce 524 million tons of greenhouse gases that reaches our atmosphere just by addressing wastewater treatment. That's a lot. And we can do that by generating energy because I didn't move the slide here. Because wastewater can generate up to 5 times more energy than it's necessary to treat it. Of course, depending on the treatment process that you put there. We can recover 13% of the global demand for nutrients for agriculture, nitrates, phosphates, from wastewater, further reducing the greenhouse gas generation for extracting raw material, transported long distance, and putting in place. But so far, only 11% of the wastewater treated has been reused. So we are treating little amounts of wastewater, but then 80–90% of that treated wastewater is being bring back to the environment without thinking about other use. It's important to have water in the environment for the ecological functions of a river or lake, but we have to think how we're going to reuse it. And just bringing here, William, on the NEDCs, all the countries here will put together by February the new ambitions on national determined contributions, how each country will reduce the emission of greenhouse gases. And a recently assessment done by UNEP showed that countries representing 85% of all greenhouse gases emissions do not consider wastewater as part of the solution. A little bit, the green ones there do consider. And there is a good news for Africa. When you look at the global map, Africa is the continent that has been considering wastewater as part of the NEDCs. Compare there with the north, the global north. It's not there, and your countries are doing it. My country, Brazil, have not included yet on the previous one. I understand that we are considering including now, so this is quite important. UNEP is doing many things, and I'm not going to take a long time here explaining what we do. We depend a lot on the support of donors like the government of Japan, and I salute Mr. Saito present here, because with them we can support the developing countries to address the wastewater issue. It's taking longer to move here, okay. But we are in that work of supporting African countries to establish and scale up wastewater surveillance systems for the protection of the environment and public health. We are doing that under the One Health approach in partnership with the European Union, with the collaboration of WHO and dozens of partners here in the region. We also host the Global Wastewater Initiative. That's a collaborative effort, open network, the only global open network that addresses sustainable wastewater management. So if you and the organization wants to join, just scan the QR code or approach me later for that. And we bring the changing paradigm from wastewater to a resource that should and could be used. There is more than 100 members, and as I mentioned, it's open for new members as well. Just to finish, the Global Wastewater Initiative put together a couple of years ago, with the African Development Bank, a tool that I invite all of you that do not know it yet to use it. It's the Sanitation and Wastewater Atlas of Africa, highlighting the situation, bringing in the country fact sheets that could be quite useful. And we know that several policymakers and wide public across Africa and beyond is using that tool to better understand and address the gaps, opportunities on sanitation and wastewater. Just to bring a couple of takeaway messages. And it's good to be the last one, William, because then we can bring the takeaway. I don't intend to summarize all the brilliant presentations before, but let's see if we can walk out of that room, remember those messages. So the first one is that by adopting circular economy principles, communities can increase their resilience on wastewater management solution. That will lead not only to preserve water resources and address climate change, to reduce biodiversity loss or to revert biodiversity loss and tackle pollution, but also strengthen the capacities of the most vulnerable that are not present in this beautiful air-conditioned room to face the challenge that they face every day. They are the ones that are first greeted by any type of impact, and usually they are the last one to recover. If wastewater is not an issue addressed, they're going to take much longer. This multifaceted approach ensures that communities can be better equipped to handle the complexity of water management in a changing environment, fostering a sustainable and resilient future for all. And I have to recognize the critical role of this country, Egypt, in moving ahead this agenda. We appreciate a lot not only the leadership of Egypt in COP27, bringing together, among many other results, the Lost and Damaged Fund, but also by the country effort to host in 2 weeks from now, or 3, the urban with the word urban forum. That's an amazing moment, and let's keep the momentum on wastewater moving ahead. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Alex. Actually, you did some of the work for me with your takeaway messages. So I'm so happy for that. I admire your passion for wastewater treatment. And I think what your presentation showed is the integration and circularity, how it affects all the other aspects. For me, there are three key points. We talked about circularity and solidarity as principles. We talked about frameworks, knowledge frameworks, modeling, data, how technology can help us on the information side. And we talked about technology and investment. And I was inspired, and I hope you all were, by the keynotes. And I'd like to thank them very much, also for your patience, and wish you a good Cairo Water Week. Thank you very much.